moving on to the next thing, I'm going to play. This is going to be a super long video, but I do feel like I should play this entire thing. This is shifting now over to a different sport. We are not talking basketball anymore. We are now talking about football. Here we go. This is May 18th, so about 2 days ago. 3 days ago, I mean. Nick Saban from Alabama Crimson Tide on AL.com. Nick Saban, Texas A&M bought every player in #1 recruiting class. Alabama didn't buy one. Let's watch this video.
Well, name, image, and likeness to me is a great concept for players. Players have always been allowed to work. This is just a different opportunity for them to make money by working and using their own name, image, and likeness, whether it's signing autographs, whether it's doing commercials or ads for some company or whatever. So there's nothing wrong with that. And I told our players when this whole thing started to get agents, get representation, and so you create opportunities for yourself. And our players last year created $3 million worth of opportunity for themselves by doing it the right way. And I have no problem with that. And nobody had a problem on our team with that because the guys that got the money earned it. Now, there were only 25 guys on our team that had the opportunity to earn money. The issue and the problem with name, image, and likeness is coaches trying to create an advantage for themselves. I went out and said, okay, how can we use this to our advantage? They created what's called a collective. Right? A collective is an outside marketing agency that's not tied to the university, that's funded by alumni from the university. And they give this collective millions of dollars. And that marketing agency then funnels it to the players. Right? And the coach actually knows how much money's in the collective, so he knows how much he can promise every player. That's not what name, image, and likeness was supposed to be. That's what it's become, and that's the problem in college athletics right now. And now every player is saying, well, what am I going to get? Well, my philosophy is my job is to create a platform for our players to create value for themselves and their future by becoming better people, by graduating from school and developing a career off the field, and by seeing if they can develop a career on the field and play at the next level in the NFL. Our players have made $1.7 billion in the NFL since 2010. All right, so we've created a lot of opportunity. We also have one of the highest graduation rates, in college athletics. We have the most guys that graduate inside of 4 years. So we've done a good job of that. But now in recruiting, we have players in our state that grew up wanting to come to Alabama that they won't commit to us unless we say we're going to give them what somebody else is going to give them. And my theory on that is everything that we've done in college athletics has always been equal. Your scholarship is equal. They get equal Alston money. They get equal cost of attendance. They get equal academic support. They get equal medical attention. Everything has always been equal. So I told our players, I said, we're going to have a collective, but everybody's going to get the same amount of opportunity from that collective. Now, you can go earn however much you want. And I tell the recruits the same thing, because our job is not to buy you to come to school here. And I don't know how you manage your locker room, and I don't know if this is a sustainable model, because one of you folks are going to give some player that comes to our school a bunch of money to come to our school. And then you're going to come to the game in full strut, thinking, I'm going to tell everybody I got that guy to come to Alabama. And then he's not going to play, and he's going to transfer, and you're going to say, I'm never going to do this again. All right, so I don't know how it works. I don't know how you sustain a model like that. Now, I know that we're going to lose recruits because somebody else is going to be willing to pay them more. But name, image, and likeness is something that's here. And I think the more supporters that we have for the University of Alabama in all sports, that are willing to sponsor players, whatever you want to call it, use them in your business to help your business, that's going to help our programs. The thing that I fear is at some point in time, they're just going to say we're going to have to pay players. If we start paying players, we're going to have to eliminate sports. All right, and this is all bad for college sports. I mean, we probably have what 450 people on scholarship at Alabama, whether they're women's tennis players, women's softball players, golfers, baseball players, non-revenue sports that have for years and years and years been able to create a better life for themselves because they've been able to get scholarships and participate in college athletics. That's what college athletics is supposed to be. It's not supposed to be something where people come and make money and you make a decision about where you go to school based on how much money you're going to make. You should make a decision based on where you have the best chance to develop as a person, as a student, and as a player, which is what we've always tried to major in. And we're going to continue to do that. Hopefully there's enough people out there that want to do it. But I know the consequence is going to be difficult for the people who are spending tons of money to get players. And you've read about them. You know who they are. I mean, we were second in recruiting last year. A&M was first. A&M bought every player on their team, made a deal for name, image, and likeness. All right, we didn't buy one player. All right, but I don't know if we're going to be able to sustain that in the future because more and more people are doing it. So it's tough, and people blame the NCAA. But in defense of the NCAA, we are where we are, right, because of the litigation that the NCAA gets, like the transfer portal. Every time somebody wanted to transfer, they'd apply for a waiver. Right? If you didn't give them, the NCAA didn't give them a waiver so they could be immediately eligible, they filed suit. So the NCAA would back off and give them a waiver. So they just said, we're just going to make a rule where everybody can transfer. That's how that happened. So if the NCAA doesn't get some protection from litigation, whether we got to get an antitrust or whatever it is, from a federal government standpoint, this is not going to change because they cannot enforce their rules. Just like Nate said, we have a rule right now that says you cannot use name, image, and likeness to entice a player to come to your school. Hell, read about it in the paper. I mean, Jackson State paid a guy $1 million last year that was a really good Division I player to come to the school. It was in the paper, and they bragged about it. Nobody did anything about it. I mean, these guys at Miami that are going to play basketball there for $400,000, it's in the newspaper. The guy tells you how he's doing it. So, but the NCAA can't enforce their rules because it's not against the law. And that's an issue. That's a problem. And unless we get something that protects them from litigation, I don't know what we're going to do about it.
You always wear a suit to the dentist?
Of course, man. We're talking about my teeth here.
Whoa. Very, very spicy. Spicy, I must say. And then kind of going forward, we got this story. May 19th, a day later. Nick Saban, while admitting he was, well, I guess first I should talk about kind of my thoughts on it. I understand what he's saying. You're having these people who are saying, hey, if you come to my school, we'll pay you $2 million. Okay. I'm a high school recruit. I'm 17, 18, 19 years old, going to college. And this is money where it doesn't even make sense. Somebody's going to give you $1 million. And you're like, dude, is this even real life? I know for myself, that would be something that I would find very hard to turn down at that age, even at my current age, at any age. And I do think he raises some good concerns, I would say. Yeah, you definitely don't want people saying, hey, if you come to my school, I'm going to offer you this. And it becomes a bidding war. There are some things I do feel as though that could be something that maybe you could talk to a player about. I don't know. Once again, this is just me. There's nobody to push back on this. So I think there's definitely some pros and cons. You say to obviously the richest schools are going to be able to say, hey, what's Alabama offering you? Oh, they're offering you 2.5 million. Okay, well, we just have the biggest budget in the country, and we're going to give you 8. I really do not have a huge problem with that. I think if a university wants to invest their own money into a specific player, because they really like this player and they want to give them money for them to go to that school. I think that is something that I don't think really needs to be regulated. Now, once again, the cause of that will be the richest schools will be getting the best players. But then you have a school like Jackson State, which is coached by Deion Sanders. Not only is he a huge name, but he's also a really good coach, and he's coaching a HBCU, historically black college or university. And typically in the past, they have not been able to get the same recruiting as an Alabama, as a Texas A&M, as a Texas, any of these big giant schools. But with NIL deals, I believe it has greatly helped them. So I think with NIL deals, being able to offer somebody, hey, if you come here, I'll be able to provide for you financially. Because like Nick Saban, part of I would slightly disagree with him on this, where he says you're going to college not to make money. You're going to college to become a better role model, better person in your community, learn skills outside so you can make money on and off the field. Learn how to be a grown up. I can understand that, and I can, in some ways, agree with that. But I think the other reality is that some people go to school so that they can get more money. That, I mean, you see that with some I'll talk about soon is players going to certain schools because they're in a good market. There's a big time wide receiver who went to USC, and I mean USC is in Los Angeles. There's going to be lots of opportunities for you to have some kind of NIL deal, some kind of deal where you're doing commercials and you're getting $50,000 or $1 million. Who knows how much those players out there are able to make with that amount of access to Los Angeles, Hollywood, all this kind of stuff. So, but I think players should be able to do that. I think that if a player wants to have their decision to choose between one college and the other due to the amount of money that they will be able to make, not just paid up front, like if you come to my school, I promise you I'll give you $10 million, but also being like, okay, I'll get $5 million to get there. Maybe they'll give me a new car, a new house, all this kind of stuff. And then on top of that, maybe I'll be able to get like an extra $2 million over deals while I'm in college, something like that. And I really don't have a terrible problem with that. Once again, I can see where that can go bad, because now you're going to have people choosing maybe more so based on, okay, I can make a lot of money at this school, other than, okay, this is Alabama. Like if I want to be a good football player, this is where I'm going to go to school. This is where I know Coach Saban is an absolute legend, and players that come out of Alabama speak very highly of him. And they say that he is a great coach. He taught me how to become a man on and off the field, taught me how to make money on and off the field. A lot of good reviews for Coach Saban. And I don't totally agree with his idea, because you do have coaches where, once again, it's different. You're coaching in college because it's a job. You're not coaching in college because you're going there to get an education. You have yet to hit your career. No, this is your career. And he also talked about the transfer portal and something like that as well, which once again, I really don't have too much of an issue with. And if a player wants to go from one school to another, yes, it makes it harder on the school. But I do feel as though these athletes should have that right. I don't know in terms of regulation, if you transfer from one place to another, you should be basically penalized for a year. Now, once again, I would like to hear another argument from the other side, because maybe I'm wrong on this topic. But with that being said, kind of seeing that'll have huge impacts, especially with the addition of NIL. Maybe it was too much with the transfer portal and then the NIL deals, that it kind of combined them together, where you're going to have people who are going to be like, hey, I'll give you this much money if you want to come here. I can understand how that can turn out bad, absolutely. But I do think it's an interesting thing. And my current opinion right now, um, is that I don't really have too much of an issue, but I can understand where this could go bad. I just think that it's the right of the athlete, of the college athlete, to be able to make money. It doesn't matter if they have two parents at home and they're making $20 million combined, or you have one parent at home who's barely getting by. I think in both cases, you should be able to make money financially off of your name. Now, here's another thing that I've talked about in the past with NIL deals. Maybe for those players who do get NIL deals, they're able to pay. They don't get a full ride scholarship. I mean, I'm not sure. Maybe that could be a compromise. Okay, if you're going to get an NIL deal, you won't get a full ride scholarship and you have to pay tuition. It's an interesting thought. I don't know how that would work out in the real world because, like Saban said, I think only 25 players were able to secure deals and they made like in total about $3 million, which is a lot of money. But it's not 50 or 100 guys on the team. So it is interesting. It's interesting to think about. But now going into this ESPN, it's gotten completely out of control, not a sustainable model. It's to the point where you've got these attorney agent calling collectives and saying, pay my player $100,000 a year, and then they want their piece of that. They all want to cut. Can understand that. There's going to be so much business that comes out. Should have been more specific when I said bought, and saying you can buy players through name, image, and likeness. Never mentioned anything specific. Cool. Said just across the sport. That's on me. But other than that, I don't ever any regrets over what I said Wednesday. A lot of us are silent on this. Currently adapted. Bidding. Don't want to go down that road of bidding for players at a high school. I don't. But if we go through this recruiting class this year, we lose all the players because they're making $100,000 going somewhere else. Then what can you do? There's no guardrails. I also think that's another solid point to kind of bring up the point of maybe Saban saying this because he didn't have the best recruiting class, which is something that I'll talk about. It's very, very interesting. It says, I want to create equal opportunity for every player. I think it's interesting. If a school wants to pay a player who you don't have as highly graded or is as highly recruited, isn't 5 stars, but some place wants to play that player more than you are here, why not? I mean, because maybe somewhere in the past you would have a D2 school be able to go to a player who is a 4-star, be like, hey, Alabama's already going to get 6 or 7 5-stars and 10 other 4-stars. But if you come here, we'll be able to pay you a bunch of money. So maybe that's a way for the smaller schools to be able to kind of get players from the other side. And there's a bunch of money to go around in college football. And I'm more of a fan of reducing the scope of kind of the oversight. There's a lot of people who have had a lot of complaints with the NCAA for years. I took a class my senior year of college, and we talked about the NIL deals because at that time it wasn't a thing. It was a thing that was being talked about, but it wasn't anything that had passed yet. It was not a real thing. It was just an idea at that time. And we talked about it. And at the time, I think I kind of had a similar argument to what I do now, where I said, okay, let's make a compromise. If the players are going to be able to get paid, then they should have to pay for stuff. That's a compromise that I had at the time that I kind of stick to today. Player gets an NIL deal. Okay, well then. Whereas before, when I was in college, my thought was, okay, a player is able to get an NIL deal. Okay, then he should pay tuition. But thinking about that now, I'm like, no, if a player receives one, not if he's eligible to get one, because that does not mean that he has one. If there's a player who needs that scholarship, but he's not one of the best players on the team, he's kind of one of the bottom of the roster people, and then you make him have to pay tuition just because he has the ability to get an NIL deal, but he does not have an NIL deal, that punishes the player. And I don't think that's right. So that's kind of where I've switched my view since then a couple years ago. I do think that that's an okay compromise. If a player receives an NIL deal, he should have to pay tuition or something along those lines. It's very interesting. It's tightly contested. There's a lot of people who have a lot to say. So let's go to Deion Sanders over here. Deion Sanders says Alabama football coach Nick Saban used him as a pawn to get more money from his boosters. This is Friday, May 20th, 2022 at 1:35 p.m. on Yahoo News. Let's see what this says. Deion Sanders, the head football coach at Jackson State, claimed Nick Saban called him out for illegal recruiting for his personal gain. Coach Saban used me and used Jimbo Fisher as pawns for his plea for help from his boosters and his donors, Sanders said. He claimed that Saban attacked him because his team was able to recruit some fine players like Kevin Coleman and Travis Hunter last year. Alabama's coach Saban alleged at a news conference with local business leaders in Birmingham on Wednesday that Jackson State paid $1 million to the top recruit in the class of 22 to sign with Sanders and the university. Interesting that first sentence. Alabama's coach Saban alleged, I don't care about that, but a news conference with local business leaders in Birmingham on Wednesday. I did not know that. That's important context. If that is indeed true. Huh. Wow. That is interesting. So he's at a news conference and those are local business leaders. It's not just all press, because that does have some significance. Maybe he's making a call and he's like saying, hey, you got these other schools where they have these giant groups and this huge marketing deals, and they're able to pay for a lot of the players to come to the university. They're able to promise them, hey, you'll get this amount of money, and we just don't have enough of that. Maybe that's what he's saying. That's something that I had not considered. Maybe he's saying, hey, you see these other schools? They're bad. They're taking advantage of the system. Maybe we should take advantage of the system. Did not think about that. Not saying it's true, but it's something I did not think about. All right. He went on to attack Jimbo Fisher of Texas A&M for buying, quote, every player on their team, end quote, using NIL deals. Fisher dismissed the claim and asserted that Texas A&M did not buy any player nor did they break any rule. He said, some people think they are God. Go dig into how God did his deal. You may find out about a lot of things you don't want to know. We built him up to be the czar of football. And now let's go right over to that video right now and see what Mr. Jimbo Fisher had to say in response.
In Alabama?
First of all, I'll say it's a shame that we have to do this. It's really despicable. It's despicable that somebody can say things about somebody in an organization. More importantly, 17-year-old kids taking shots at 17-year-old kids and their family. If they broke state laws, but they're all money. We bought every player on this group. We never bought anybody. No rules were broken. Nothing was done wrong. It was all in the way we do things, the ethics in which we do things. And these families, it's despicable that a reputable head coach could come out and say this when he doesn't get his way or things don't go his way. The narcissist in him doesn't allow those things to happen. It's ridiculous when he's not on top. And parity in college football he's been talking about, go talk to coaches who coach for him. You'll find out all the parity. Go dig into wherever he's been. You can find out anything. And it's a shame that you got to sit there and defend 17-year-old kids and families and Texas A&M because we do things right. We're always going to do things right. But we're always going to be here. We're doing a heck of a job. These coaches have done a great job. Our players have done a great job. The whole organization of recruiting people. It's despicable that we got to sit there at this level of ball and say these things to defend the people of this organization. The kids, 17-year-old kids and their families. It's amazing. Some people think they're God. Don't dig into how God did his deal. You may find out about a guy that a lot of things you don't want to know. We built him up to be the czar of football. Don't dig into his past or anybody's ever coached with him. You can find out anything you want to find out, what he does and how he does it. It's despicable. It really is. And it's a shame we have to sit up here and have this conversation about things we do. And it's personal to us. Yes, it is. Personal to A&M. It's personal to our players. It's personal to our coaches and everybody involved. And I know the guy. I know him really well. It's amazing we're allowed to do those things. Really despicable. And I hate it. For our players that are coming here, we get things the right way, have done things the right way, and will continue to do things the right way. I apologize to you, the people who insult you publicly the way they're doing it. And our fans, I apologize to you guys for people saying those things about Texas A&M. I promise you this: there are no violations. There are nothing wrong. It's the second time we've had to do this with grown men who don't get their way and want to pout, throw a fit, and act up. Just go ask all the people who work for him to know exactly what he's about. I always said this. My dad always told me this: when people show you who they are, believe him. He's showing you who he is.
Questions? To the left, Olin. A couple of things, Jimbo. First of all, have you had any contact with Nick since?
No. Oh, he's called.
You just didn't take the call?
Not going to. We're done.
And
He showed you who he is.
then I just wanted to,
He's the greatest ever, huh?
and then I just wanted,
You got all the advantages. It's easy.
I just wanted to just put it point blank. So no players in your, you're saying that no players.
There's no laws of anything we ever promised done, anything that goes against the laws in the state of Texas, and it's insulting to say a 17-year-old and his family broke laws. Like,
Brett?
Y'all have both spoken so highly of each other in the past in terms of what y'all done in your previous relationship. So how disappointing was it to hear that from, again, mentor type?
it's difficult. No, I wasn't. No, listen, you coach with people like Bobby Bowden and learn how to do things. You coach with other people and learn how not to do things. There's a reason people don't go,
Whoa. Wow. Interesting, Mr. Jimbo. Wow. All right. Strong word from Deion Sanders. I feel like, sorry, I'm eating. This is Pacific Gold Original Beef Jerky. Got this from Costco. Sorry for the audio listener. One package, 35 grams, 90 calories, 5 calories from fat, half a gram of total fat, 30 milligrams cholesterol, 740 milligrams sodium, 9 grams of carbs, 1 gram of fiber, 8 grams of sugar, 14 grams of protein. It's got 2% calcium, 8% iron. Ingredients: beef, brown sugar, water, salt, beef stock, bunch of stuff in it. I want to say, what kind of beef did they use for this? Premium steak with natural finishes. I think this is top round steak. I believe it's the very cheap steak. Very good. I like beef jerky. Let me get a sip of my sparkling ice. 1 second. Ah, man, that is good. Good stuff. All right, so back to talking about the Jimbo. So, first off, I think we can admit the scenario that Nick Saban was drawing up. In my mind, I could see how that could be a negative thing. Could see how that could get out of hand. But with that being said, they both say, I have to take Jimbo Fisher at his word. He says they did not do anything illegal, and there was no evidence that was brought up by Nick Saban. He just said it, or I didn't see any hard evidence that he that Jimbo Fisher stole any players, paid for any players. I do not have any evidence of that. So maybe that's a lack of research by me, or maybe Jimbo Fisher is telling the truth. Maybe he's not. And also, you have to go back to what Deion Sanders said. He said, Coach Saban used me and used Jimbo Fisher as pawns for his plea for help from his boosters and his donors. It's interesting. Maybe he is. He might be. That might be his tactics. Maybe he is using these people to try and get some more recruits and get more money for his recruits, because Alabama, I mean, you go back, I'm on 247sports.com right now, looking at the past recruiting ranking. Start 2017, I graduated high school. Alabama number 1, 2017. Let's go to 2018. 2018, where's Alabama? 5th. Georgia was number 1. Let's go to 2019. Let's see. Alabama is 1st in 2019, followed by Georgia. Texas A&M is 4th, 2019. Right, 2020, Georgia is 1st, followed by Alabama. A&M is 6th. 2021 is up next. Alabama is 1st. Texas A&M is 8th. 2022, Texas A&M is 1st. Alabama is 2nd. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. That 2023 and Notre Dame. Yeah, not many people have been officially recruited yet. So 2022 is one we shall focus on. Yeah, 30 total commits. Texas A&M, 8 5-stars, 19 4-stars, 3 3-stars. The average rating is 94.91 on a scale of 0 to 100. Total points is 332.87. That's a measure of the recruiting power. This is by 247sports.com. This is their opinion. And then Alabama, 26 recruits, 3 5-stars, 19 4-stars, same as Texas A&M, less 5-stars. 3 3-stars for Alabama, same as Texas A&M. And their average for Alabama was 95.19 compared to 94.91 for Texas A&M. But you have 322.14 points for Alabama compared to 332.87 points for Texas A&M. Maybe this is what Nick Saban was talking about. If his claims are completely false, and if his worries over the current state of everything is completely wrong. And I definitely disagree with some of his overall ideas. I don't think there should be. I just worry about this thing with the NIL deals and with players transferring. I do worry about over-regulation. And I do worry that Nick Saban, he has a lot to say. He has a lot to say in what happens in college football. He's one of the best coaches of all time in that field. And also I'm glad I pulled up that Yahoo News article. I didn't notice that before. Who is he talking to? Yeah, it's on the internet, but he's at a conference and there's business leaders in the audience. If what Yahoo says is true, and I take it at face value, I believe what they're saying is true right there. If that's the case, then why are the business leaders there? What other purpose would they be there if Nick Saban wasn't trying to convey a message to them? Not sure. Maybe he has other motives. Maybe Deion Sanders and Jimbo Fisher are right. I'm not saying they're right because I do not know. I do not know if Jimbo Fisher bought players or did what Nick Saban alleged, or even Deion Sanders. I mean, I do know about the Deion Sanders situation that they did. There was stories that I remember. I didn't follow this one too closely, but I believe there was some stories about them paying a player to come to their school, which I think, as Nick Saban said, is is not allowed under the NCAA rules, but I think Deion Sanders denied it, I would assume. So I'm not sure if Nick Saban is right there, but that's one where I did see a story about that. I did see a story about that, but I don't know if it's true or not. So there's that. But another thing that I kind of want to go on with this was a little something that I thought was kind of funny. This is BleacherReport.com. Texas A&M athletic director says Nick Saban's comments violate SEC sportsmanship rules. So you got Scott Polachek. I think that's how you pronounce it. May 19th, 2022. Starts off with head football coach Jimbo Fisher isn't the only high-profile member of Texas A&M's athletic department who took issue with comments from Alabama head coach Nick Saban. Texas A&M athletic director Ross Bjork told Ross Dellinger of Sports Illustrated he views the comments as a personal attack. Quote, personal attack on the school and Fisher, and he reached out to the SEC commissioner Greg Sankey about Saban potentially violating the SEC's sportsmanship bylaws. And we have, quote, I don't know why Nick Saban would say what he said, except he's threatened, end quote, Bjork said. Tend to agree with him there. Quote, there is a saying, an emperor who loses their dynasty lashes out. He seems to be making excuses, end quote. This is personal. Coach Fisher views this as an attack on his integrity and Texas A&M's integrity to have personal attacks to say the only reason A&M is recruiting well is NIL money is wrong, end quote. Well, maybe that might have been what, yeah, I could definitely see as the reason why maybe Nick Saban was saying the reason why A&M's class was so good last year, why it was better than his, is due to them tampering and doing illegal activities with the transfer portal, with recruiting, that kind of stuff, saying, hey, if you come here, we'll give you so and so and so and so. Once again, I think schools should have the opportunity to do that. And I think players should have the opportunity to have that. But that might have been what Nick Saban was saying, though. I mean, he was kind of saying that one could definitely see it as him saying the only reason that A&M was able to recruit well was because of this. And he's saying that should not happen, which is a legitimate, I do not agree with it, but is a legitimate concern. I can see that argument where, yeah, I can see that. I could see how some schools should, I could see or understand the argument that, hey, if people are able to pay for players, then that's unfair. And I can understand that argument, but I disagree. I think that, well, I don't disagree that that could happen and that might happen, that may happen, has happened. I do think that fundamentally it is the right of a school and of a player to negotiate. Because I think one of the things I said earlier was this doesn't just help the big schools. This could help smaller schools as well, who say there were 6 3-stars from between Alabama and Texas A&M that were recruited. What if there was a lower level D1 school or even D2, D3 school who went to one of those 3-star players and said, hey, I know you're going to go to Alabama. Yeah, I know that they're a huge university, very well known both for Alabama winning titles. Texas A&M, great coach. I mean, these are good opportunities, man, playing in the SEC. But we could offer you a certain amount of money if you do come here. And I think if I'm in that position, I say, okay, some I have to seriously consider. Playing in the SEC, being on Alabama with a great coach, or going to a smaller school where maybe you'll get more playing time, most likely on a smaller school team. Could end up in more visibility, depending. If you don't play any snaps for Alabama and you're going to play half the snaps for another team, and you're going to get paid more money there, and I'd like to hear an argument of why you should turn that down. And I could definitely be wrong about this, but interesting. Okay. All right. Oh, and here we go over here. Still screen sharing. Yep. Brian Fisher of Athlon Sports shared the bylaws Bjork referenced. Okay, let's pull this up. Okay, I want to see this. All right. Brian Fisher on Twitter. What A&M is referring to in those pesky SEC bylaws? All right, this is 10.5. I assume section. All institutional staff members and student athletes of a member institution shall conduct themselves with honesty and good sportsmanship. Their behavior shall at all times reflect the standards of honor and dignity that characterize participation in the collegiate setting. For intercollegiate athletes to promote the character development and participate to enhance the integrity of higher education and promote civility in society, coaches, student athletes, and all others associated with athletic programs and events should adhere to such fundamental values as honor, respect, fairness, civility, honesty, and responsibility. These values should be manifest not only in athletics participation, but also in the broad spectrum of activities affecting the athletics program, such as doing a sit-down interview on a panel. That's my context. It is responsible, back to the 10.5 sportsmanship thing. It is responsible of each member institution to establish policies for sportsmanship and ethical conduct in intercollegiate athletics consistent with the educational mission and goals of the institution. Furthermore, member institutions are responsible for educating all constituencies about these policies on a continued basis. All right. Section 10.5.2, moving coaches and administrators shall refrain from public criticism of other member institutions, their staff, or players. Coaches and administrators shall also refrain from making public statements and accusations with regard to infractions concerning member institutions and their personnel. In response to questions by the media, it is appropriate to state that infractions are reported, investigated, and addressed in accordance with established conference and NCAA procedures. Coaches, players, and support personnel shall refrain from all public criticism of officials, which shall include making public any specific communications with the conference office and or officiating coordinators related to officiating. That is section 10.5.3. Here's 10.5.4. Coaches and support personnel shall provide favorable examples and appearance, conduct, language, and sportsmanship, and shall refrain from personal conduct that may incite spectators. Okay, so the big one is that 10.5.2. Coaches and administrators shall refrain from public criticism of other member institutions, staff, or players. Also, public statements and accusations, keyword accusations, with regard to infractions concerning member institutions and their personnel. Interesting. So by this law, you can't talk crap. By both people are. That is interesting. I mean, if that's the case, then you could stretch that out and say Jimbo Fisher was making accusations about the deal, the contract or the deal that Nick Saban did. Not exact overt per se. He didn't say, yeah, well, Nick Saban gets paid so and so and so, and there's this, this, and this. No, but he did. That was public criticism of another member or institution. And Nick Saban did the exact same thing. I mean, you heard the video just like I did. He made an accusation against both Jackson State, where Deion Sanders is the head coach of, and he also made an accusation and public criticism of Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M. So therefore, he is in violation of that, and so is Deion Sanders. I mean, let's go back to the Deion Sanders article. Well, maybe not. Called him out for illegal recruiting. Coach Saban used me and used Jimbo Fisher as pawns for his plea for help from his boosters and his donors. That's a claim. Let's go back. Shall refrain from making public statements and accusations with regards to infractions concerning members, institution, and their personnel. Let's go back to the article. Used me and used Jimbo Fisher as pawns for his plea for help from his boosters and his donors. That's an accusation. That's saying the reason why he did this was so that he could get more money from his boosters and his donors. That's an accusation. According to the bylaws, that is not allowed to happen. You're not allowed to do that. And going back to Jimbo Fisher, what he said, he made public comments about Nick Saban. I mean, let me just pull this up. He made public criticism of Nick Saban, and therefore he's breaking these laws as well. So everybody's breaking laws here. And I disagree with these. You can't do public criticism of another coach or another player or another institution. Well, what defines public criticism? Is saying he's a crappy coach? How do you know about the context? What if you're good friends with the other coach? You're like, man, he's such a bad coach. But you're joking. But according to these laws, you're not allowed to criticize. Does it get that down to the weeds? I'm not sure. Do not know these answers. Take a sip. With that being said, I mean, you could look at this in multiple ways. My main takeaway is this stuff is crazy. Fisher was an offensive coordinator on Saban's staff when the Alabama coaches at LSU called his former boss a narcissist. Some people think they're God. Go dig into how God did his deal. That's an accusation, possibly. I'm not sure. It's not overt, like I said. You may find out about the guy. A lot of things you don't want to know. We built him up to be this star of football. Go dig into his past. Oh, and then here's a statement from Greg Sankey. Here we go. Let's see what he says. This is once again from Brian Fisher. This is Greg Sankey, quote, "The membership of the Southeastern Conference has established expectations for conduct and sportsmanship that were not met last night, nor today," said Sankey. Quote, "A hallmark of the SEC is intense competition within an environment of collaboration. Public criticism of any kind does not resolve issues and creates a distraction from seeking solutions for the issues facing college athletics today. There is tremendous frustration concerning the absence of consistent rules from state to state related to name, image, and likeness. We need to work together to find solutions, and that will be our focus at the upcoming SEC spring meetings. As a result," end quote. "As a result of public comments made on May 18th by Alabama head coach Nick Saban, a public reprimand is issued for comments he made in violation of SEC bylaws 10.2.3 and 10.5.2, which is what we had pulled up earlier right here for the video. People, 10.5.2, coaches and administrators shall refrain from public criticism of other member institutions, staff, or players. Shall also refrain from making public statements and accusation with regard to infractions concerning member institutions and their personnel. So that is what he is talking about. Related to ethical conduct for derogatory comments and public criticism of another institution's athletics program. Goes on later to say, as a result of public comments made on May 19th by Texas A&M head coach Jimbo Fisher, a public reprimand is issued for comments he made in violation of SEC bylaw 10.5.2 related to ethical conduct for public criticism of another institution's staff. Very, very interesting. Man, oh man, they got him. They got him. And then we have another thing. All right, let's see this. This is February 2nd, 2022. Let's play this video. Cover 3 podcast, CBS Sports HQ on Twitter, or Cover 3 podcast on Twitter. Jimbo Fisher did not hold back reacting to Nick Saban's comments today. This is February 2nd, 2022.
Knowledge of it. What is the biggest misconception out there relative to what actually is going on?
No funds or all these things that people were talking about in the high school kids for sure. Players and your team, they do get those things. We were one of the low ones. I mean, if I remember right, it was Nick who brought up his quarterback got $1 million deal. I mean, and that was great. Iowa State put out an article that they had the highest NIL deals of anybody in the country, which is legal. It's all legal. It's fine. But that had nothing to do with this class or anything else in which it went on. This is hard work by our staff. And I say it's insulting to the kids who come here that you insinuate that. And people insinuate that that things were taken off a message board. Bro Bible by a guy named Sliced Bread, whoever the heck that is, who has no clue about what goes on. But NIL is here to stay in college football. It's going to be a factor in college football. There is no doubt in the future going forward. And so in the transfer portal. So it's here to stay. But those reports and the things that people say are very irresponsible. And that people need to figure out the truth before they do it. Look, there's a lot of reputable people in this business who I really respect that copied that. There was a vice president of Notre Dame who even said that. Who, off a message board? Come on now. I mean, and what goes on, and people have no idea what's happening, and those things aren't true.
Interesting, I must say. Interesting. So it seems this isn't the first time that Nick Saban has mentioned this. Huh. Interesting. Yeah, this article ends with one thing is certain. The October 8th matchup between Alabama and Texas A&M in Tuscaloosa will be appointment viewing for all college football fans. That's going to be a good game. That's going to be a crazy good game. Going to be very interesting. Very interesting. This whole thing is very interesting. I did not know about the SEC's bylaw about sportsmanship. Very interesting. Multiple coaches. Now, maybe Deion Sanders, since he's not in the SEC, he doesn't have to abide by those rules. That's interesting. But would Nick Saban be reprimanded or breaking the laws since he made it about a coach who's in a different conference? I'm not sure. Or is it only because he did it to another SEC coach and that other SEC coach did it back to him? Very interesting. But staying on this topic, I do want to talk about the transfer portal and kind of how that ties in with the NIL deals. I've talked about it before, but I touched on it earlier. USC lands Pitt prize, Jordan Addison. This is from Outkick.com by Sam Amico 2 days ago. In one of the biggest moves this college football transfer season, Pitt receiver Jordan Addison is headed to SEC. Addison was this season's Biletnikoff winner as the nation's best receiver, regarded as the top prospect in the transfer portal. His sophomore season, he was an All-American, 100 catches for 1,593 receiving yards. Expected to be a hot target for Nick Saban and Alabama. But the better bidder, keyword bidder, in USC landed the elite receiver. Earlier, he had narrowed his options down to USC and the Texas Longhorns. And so here we go. Jordan Addison tweeted out a message. Let's see what he says. I'm going to have to, here we go. See, the last few weeks have been very difficult. I struggled with my decision as to whether I should exercise my right to enter the portal. Student athletes have not always had that opportunity. I made that choice. I am and will always be grateful to the University of Pittsburgh, to Coach Narduzzi, all my coaches, past and present, the faculty, the fans, supporters, but especially to all my teammates. I love them. Winning an ACC championship is ours forever. Those true friendships will last. A part of me will always be H2P, which means hail to Pitt. I've now carefully considered the advice of my family and co-friends and fully weighed both the risk and benefits associated with my decision. I also respect that others may make a different choice, but for me, I will continue my full development as a student athlete by enrolling at USC. Much love always, J.A. Interesting. And I've heard, as somebody who works in Pittsburgh, I've heard some people give specific details of what they've been told. Apparently there was maybe a house that was involved in a certain number of money that he was not going to receive from Pitt football. That's what I've heard. I'm not saying that's true or not, but I'm telling you what I have been told by people in the area. So 24/7 Sports announcing it. This was May 19th at 5:21 p.m. announcing him going over. And now we're going to go over to some kind of the view of people here in Pittsburgh on this move. Really interesting. Really, really interesting. I mean, you kind of look at it. Obviously, coming into this, you can kind of feel or have an idea of what Pittsburgh's going to say. They're going to say, just paying for players. That's not fair to a place like Pitt, who cannot spend as much money on their players. Which I understand. I understand that argument. I think that's absolutely true. USC has more money to throw at this Jordan Addison. And I agree that that's 99% the reason why he probably went to USC was for financial reasons, because I do not think he was going to have the same financial care with Pitt as he would with USC. But this article is written by Jerry DiPaolo of the triblive.com with Pittsburgh. I don't know if this site is for Western Pennsylvania's trusted news source, triblive.com. Okay, Friday, May 20th at 7:29 p.m. Jerry DiPaolo posted about this. It starts off, Jordan Addison conversation won't go away anytime soon, but it's become clear why USC coach Lincoln Riley was so intent on adding the Biletnikoff winner to his already loaded wide receiver group. He needs to win and win now. I agree. I think most coaches need to win and win now. I think that's the reality for most, if not all coaches. And it is specific with Lincoln Riley. He does need to win there. I mean, they brought him over to USC to kind of revitalize the program, and he's done great in recruiting. I mean, NIL deals, like I said before, LA is a great place for that. A great place if you want to use your name, image, or likeness to generate revenue. Absolutely. He goes on to talk about his total salary at 110 million. Okay. He was bought 2 homes in Norman, Oklahoma. So 1 of 4 high profile receivers. He's got other things. Yes. Okay. Just as Pitt would have been on the cusp of another special season if Addison had stayed, USC looks like at least the favorite to win the Pac-12. With so much money thrown at Riley and the reported riches set aside for Addison from USC's Name, Image, and Likeness Collective. The pressure to win will be intense. Well, yeah, even if Addison wasn't going there, that would still be intense. I think it's intense for all football coaches, or it should be. But I can understand that Lincoln Riley is a interesting thing, interesting dilemma. It's a complicated situation that also will have off the field ramifications, including NCAA legislation that, in a best case scenario, will aim to regulate boosters trying to lure players to their schools. Addison didn't start the mass movement into the transfer portal, but his case underscores what universities and their fans must confront and accept. Yeah, it's a reality. If the player's not getting the opportunity that they believe that they deserve or that they want, it's not perfect for them. I believe they should be able to transfer to another school. And I don't think they should have to sit out. I think you transfer to another school, you should be able to play right away. I don't really know the argument for why they would have to wait a year. Maybe is that because it would stop people from transferring every single year? Why should they not be able to do that? Yeah, it disrupts the team, but I believe that's a player's right to play wherever they want. Now, maybe if they change multiple teams throughout a season, like week 1, they're on Alabama, and by week 6 or something, they're on Clemson because like Clemson's going to win the national title. So I'm just going to transfer to Clemson right now. Yeah, maybe in that case, you got to be like, all right, well, you can't transfer in the middle of the season and then play for that other team. That's something that makes sense. Very interesting thing, and obviously the bias is from the Pittsburgh perspective, but I think it's interesting to look at that, as I am a member of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And now let's go over to somebody who I have a special place in my heart for, somebody who I knew about before even coming to the great state of Pennsylvania, before moving in, and that is Mr. Mark Madden, radio host, longtime broadcaster. He's done a lot of things with wrestling, WWE, that sort of stuff. He does a radio show for WXDX 1059, The X, here in Pittsburgh, FM station. And he's made several comments about not only just the draft for the Pittsburgh Steelers, which I guess I'll touch on next, but this Jordan Addison dilemma. Here is his article. Let's go to this. Mark Madden, April 30th at 1:30 p.m. Mark Madden's hot take. College athletes should do what's best for themselves. Jordan Addison, the relating Belitnikov. Pitt supporters are apologetic, which is their preferred disposition. You'd think they'd be grateful for a chance to martyr themselves. Coach Pat Narduzzi is mad, also his preferred disposition. He thinks Southern Cal is tampering with Addison before he enters the transfer portal. Well, duh. Yes. Yeah, I think they absolutely tampered. But how are you going to stop that? They give him a call and say, I really don't know how you would be able to stop that. Be like, hey, if you come here, you'll be able to make good money. Yeah, that's most likely why he transferred. Yes, but there's no reason for Addison to stay at Pitt. Let's see his argument. Pitt will have a new quarterback. Their quarterback, Kenny Pickett, just got drafted to the Steelers. Offensive coordinator and receivers coach next season. So new coaches, offensive coordinator and receivers coach. If Addison has to start over, do it someplace with a higher profile where he can better profit by his name, image, and likeness rights. Okay, here's another thing. Addison is friends with Southern Cal quarterback Caleb Williams. Both are from the DC area. Did not know that. That's interesting. Addison isn't betraying Pitt. He doesn't owe Pitt anything. If Addison stayed at Pitt, he'd betray himself. Yeah, I guess the overall sentiment is true. I mean, you kind of, you know, it's not it's not that it's your obligation. If you get recruited to a place and you commit to them, that you should play for them for 4 years. I don't think you should, but there's an argument for that. I can see how some people might believe that as the case, but I don't think that he had to stay there. I think he has every right to transfer to another school. And I think his reason for doing so is also makes a whole bunch of sense. A whole bunch of sense. Freedom of movement finally exists for college athletes. Coaches recruit kids that move on to greener. Why can't athletes seek out better situations? I agree. So then Mark kind of goes on to talk about. Here we go. Here's how he ends it. Athletes should do what's best for themselves. Nobody should have a complaint about it. Why do athletes have to go through the filter of college football to get to the NFL, anyways? That's a different argument. Should a high school athlete be able to either skip college or play football in another league between the NFL and high school? Like maybe there's like the NBA has the G League, where I think out of high school you can play in the G League instead of going to college and get paid that way. Interesting stuff. Yeah, so I mean it is kind of interesting to see this kind of stuff with the NIL deals. I understand how it could be out of control, but I just think a player has a right to choose to go to where they play at school. I believe that is a player's right, and I think they should be able to. Schools should be able to, I guess, tamper, kind of say, hey, listen, if you come here, we'll pay you this much. We'll change your life. I can see how that can get out of hand. I can see. But I think the schools have the right to do that. I don't think the NCAA should restrict that right or deny, because that's only taken away. I mean, yeah, there's definitely some downsides to it. Obviously, if a school just has more money, they can get whoever they want. That's true. That is true. It could get out of hand, but there are other schools that could also bid for a player, be like, hey, we can't offer you as much money, but we can hook you up with this guy or this guy or this guy. Something like that. Like you think of a place like Oregon. Maybe part of that deal is, hey, we'll be able to get you in with Nike. Nike headquarters, I believe, are right with the University of Oregon. You say, hey, can't give you $2 million, a house and a car, but we can give you real access to Nike. Hey, that's not direct money, but that's an opportunity that might be worth money in the future. Maybe you're able to become a Nike sponsored athlete. Interesting stuff. And then you have schools in New York, like I really don't know, like a New York college that has like a good football team, but I assume that there's a couple where you say, hey, we're right in New York, like a Rutgers University that's in New Jersey. They can say, hey, we're not technically in New York, but we have some connections. We can get you in with some people who are in New York, and we can guarantee you that you will be getting a deal with these people. I say, why not? Say, why not? It opens up a door. Definitely opens up a door. But let us go back. We got 6 videos playing right now. All right, Mark Madden. Yeah, and then he kind of had this other thing where he talked about Kenny Pickett. Mark Madden, Kenny Pickett doesn't close the Steelers gap among AFC North quarterbacks. He was one of the people who was very, very upset about Steelers drafting a quarterback with their first round decision in this year's NFL draft. he thought that Kenny Pickett wasn't the best quarterback among the bunch, and he also thought that there was no quarterback that deserved to be a first round pick in this year's draft. But he said that a lot of people did it. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but this is my understanding. That a lot of people were like, he's the hometown kid. He's a good fit for the offense. He plays kind of the way that Mike Tomlin, the head coach, wants him to play, and so as a result, he might be a good pick for the job. And there's definitely some truth in those statements. I think he was probably the best fit. It was between him and Malik Willis. Malik Willis might have been the better player, but I think Kenny Pickett was the better fit because he's already in Pitt. The training facility for Pitt and for the Steelers is in the same building. And then also the Pitt Panthers play at Heinz Field where the Steelers play. So there's already a lot of similarity with just the facilities. I mean, he's probably had contact with some of the coaches already, I bet, when he was in college. All very interesting. Very, very interesting.